Good morning. Welcome back to the library. This morning we're going to look at a book called What Jesus Meant by Garry Wills. You probably should Google first Garry Wills. Garry is trained as a classicist. He proficient in Latin and Greek. Taught for many years at Northwestern University in Chicago. A very devout Catholic, married 60 years. His wife passed away 2019 or 20, I think. He's still alive. He's written books on Lincoln and Nixon and books about Catholicism, and this one, What Jesus Meant. Now, the perplexity that faces thinking people about Jesus is some people break it down to what did Jesus say? And other people break it down to what would Jesus do? WWJD. But there is also what did Jesus mean? So you say, well, probably those three things are the same. Really not necessarily. I mean, because he's a proficient in the languages, there are some things that Jesus said that in the English we don't understand correctly. We have never been able to get our hands around it. Part of it is that Jesus was quite humorous, and we didn't always, and the biblical writers didn't always catch his humor. So what did Jesus say? Well, it's not exactly what Jesus meant. And what would Jesus do? Well, that's a lot of people trying to boil Christianity down to, the only things that Jesus did, when there's plenty of things in the world today that you just have to use the principles of Christ to address. But what did Jesus mean is a very moving book. You will not agree with all of it, but you will think about it every page you turn. All right? Now, if I could sum it up, Willis says that Jesus was deeply opposed to formalism, which you can see that, right? There's a great body of work that Jesus is oppositional to formalism. He doesn't care much for hierarchy and the priestly class and how they hold it over the people. And Jesus was opposed to, greed. And so Willis would really boil it down to that a lot of the things that Jesus means is he's anti-hierarchy, anti-formalism, and anti-greed. And here are some selections, all right? I think I've got a few that I have bookmarked. Jesus walks through social barriers and taboos as if they were cobwebs. I do love that sentence. People and practices other men were required to shun, he embraces. And that infuriates the proper and observant in his culture. Women on their period, for instance, were unclean and had to be purified before they could go to the temple. They could not deal with others, prepare food, wash clothes, without contaminating them. Thus, the woman in Luke's Gospel, chapter 8, who had a perpetual flow of blood, was a perpetual outcast. She was denied a spiritual life more completely than would those people who would lay under a later church's edict, according to Leviticus 15:25 through 27. In other words, he goes through a long passage here where women like that are to be considered unclean and avoided, but Jesus didn't do either. Jesus welcomed people, and he didn't have much for formalism. Then there's this passage. Given the hostility between the priest and Jesus, it is not surprising that there are no priests among Jesus' followers. The Greek word for priest is not used in any of the four Gospels. Jesus later adds, or Paul later adds, two more positions in Ephesians 4, evangelists and shepherds, making 19 ministries in all the gifts of the Spirit. But not one of them is priestly. These are all functions, not offices, and they derive from the Spirit, not from human organizations or bureaucracies. Willis goes into a long dissertation about hierarchy and how that the Jews had created this system where there was a priest who could tell all the people what to do, and then he really was unchecked and unaccountable to anybody himself, and that it was reserved only for men, and that putting all that power in one person's hand was the opposite of what Jesus wanted to do. That Jesus wanted to distribute the gifts, distribute the power amongst all the people. And now bear in mind that Garry Wills is also a Catholic, but I don't think many people in Catholicism would consider him a very good Catholic, because he's been dissenting against Catholicism for 50 years. He doesn't appreciate papal authority, and he has real problems with the dictates of an organization like that. And so he's in opposition to, and he thinks Jesus is in opposition to that. Jesus has hostility towards hierarchy. And I think that there's plenty in the Bible to make his point. But the final reading is this one. In Paul, God is like the father of the prodigal son, who rushes to embrace beforehand, or like the good shepherd who searches out his lost sheep. This God does not sit on a throne waiting for sinners to bring their sacrificial offerings to him. This God is an agent throughout. This is in a long section about the death of Jesus, and that God takes the initiative here, that we are not the ones who take the initiative, that God is the one trying to make things right. Just like the prodigal son comes home, but the father meets him in the street. That God is not sitting idly by, letting us destroy ourselves. God is working overtime to try to reconcile us to himself and help us reconcile to each other. And so it's a powerful book. Again, as I said at the beginning, I don't think you're going to agree with every word in it, but I do think that you'll be challenged on every page, and you will learn something new every few pages, and you will have a greater appreciation for really what Jesus did mean. Not just what he said, but that he was in opposition to formalism, to greed, and to systems of hierarchy that left the people with no power. So, have a good day.